Welcome to Wake Up. This is Rabbi Rittenhouse, and Rabbi Marks will be joining me in just a moment. As you've probably heard over the last week or so, there has been some development in regards to Israel and the release of the hostage and a peace process with the Palestinians. So one of the things we want to talk about today is from a couple of different perspectives. We're going to talk about that and what that looks like. And Rabbi, from my perspective, I have hope and optimism, but there's also some trepidation there as well.
That's putting it nicely. Yes, it's nice. Trepidation. Like you, I want to believe. But like you, I know the math. How many times did it come to this point? Now, it appears at the moment, okay, with the release of the living hostages and the release of 2,000 Hamas, okay, and 250 of those were on death row, okay, that maybe something might happen. But here's the hang-up, and I was asking earlier today and got the answer. If the bodies have not returned, okay, of the deceased hostages, it's a deal breaker.
That's correct.
If I understand my source, there's nothing left to do but to carpet bomb the entire thing. Now, I was thinking, okay, how big is the Gaza Strip? Well, let me tell you. Pueblo, the city, no, let's use Colorado Springs. I use the numbers. Colorado City, Colorado Springs, okay, up north, it's 191 square miles. The Gaza Strip is 141 square miles with 4 times the population. You know, now imagine for a moment the city of Colorado Springs decides to make war on the U.S. That's how silly it was.
Yes.
But the surprise attack, the viciousness, that's what really has set the Israeli people off in a tizzer. And rightly so. But it's thought that now, in all honesty, they're not really sure what they're going to do. And I learned something else today I didn't know,
What's
which
that?
is going to affect this whole thing. There are multiple groups of Hamas. It's not just Hamas. It's multiple subgroups of Hamas throughout the Gaza Strip. And in fact, not all of them agree. There was an article that came out in yesterday's paper, reported on the news, I think today, that 8, what they thought were sympathizers, which were more moderate Hamas, if such a thing exists, was publicly executed in the street.
Yep.
Okay, so here you got Hamas killing Hamas, okay, and just amazing. But maybe we should backpedal and look at the whole story and its context for some degree. So, what do you remember about October 7th, 2 years ago?
Well, I was unaware of it until we arrived to synagogue, and we were aware of what was going on. And even at that point, I wasn't aware of the devastation, because you so often hear of violence going on in Israel and attacks on Israel, and you're like, well, this is another one. It's just par for the course. And you didn't realize the extent and the planning that took place, and the extent of damage, the extent of lives that took place. And it was, in many ways, it was Israel's 9/11, but
It was.
population-wise, it was even worse. In terms of overall population, the impact that it had. And when I hear people talking about, well, Israel has to have restraint, they got to pull back. How many people were asking for restraint when it come to retaliate against Al Qaeda?
On 9/11.
Yes.
We had people joining the military. We had people crying out for blood. We had generals who were looking for the bad guy.
Yep.
And this would be no different.
Yet, for Israel seems to constantly be in this position of trying to defend herself. Trying to defend herself from the world opinion, from the world court, from world political leaders, even leaders within our own country. Constantly trying to defend her actions, even though Israel has consistently consistently, more than any other nation, went out of its way to try to protect civilians. And you don't hear that a whole lot because that doesn't fit with the narrative. But Israel goes out of its way to protect innocent civilians, including air raids, including dropping leaflets and telling people to get
Advance
out.
notice.
Yes.
This block is going to go away next week. Or
Yes.
tomorrow.
Leave.
You know, a bit as humanitarian as you can be, and I'm going to be honest with you, almost too civilized. When war becomes civilized, people, they won't quit fighting. You know? Now, it's my opinion, okay, that it was, by the way, on Sukkot, when the attack took place, that the creative barbarism, imagine from it, here comes a handful of people in, gliders. It looks kind of cool. Here comes these gliders in formation. Next thing you know, they're all loaded with machine guns.
Yes.
And the butchery. They gave a report, which I read today, from the people who were doing the autopsies, just about the savageness of the bodies that were returned. And when I started looking more and more at it, I don't know how I could trust such a group of people to want peace.
When your culture in many ways is I'm not trying to cast a wide net over all Muslims or over all Palestinians, but certainly within the radical Muslim movement.
Cast the net over Hamas.
Yes, very much so. It is a death culture in which death is celebrated. Death is actively looked after. We don't, when I say we love life and we try to preserve life at all costs. They go out of their way to take out innocent life. They go out of their way to affect the innocent because they know that it terrorizes people and it freezes people and it scares people, where we go out of our way to constantly preserve innocent life and to be as protective and as civilized as possible. And it's hard to get away from the fact that it's a war. Mm-hmm. Innocent people die in a war, and it wasn't Israel. It wasn't Israel that attacked Hamas. It was Hamas that attacked Israel from Palestine.
Now, the other problem I have
Hamas.
calling this a war
Gaza.
is normally a war you have two sides, and they all have their uniform, and so you know who the bad guy was.
Yes.
But that's not possible in this particular situation. Okay, the guy holding the gun can put it in a hole or hide it behind a tree, and all of a sudden he's just another innocent waving his hands. And when I started looking more and more, I looked at the numbers. Okay, more than 1,250, okay, were killed in the initial attack, but another 540 plus in a secondary attack, which pushes their numbers around, 1,800.
Mm-hmm.
Now look at the number that's being reported by Hamas, 64,000. No way. Okay, maybe, and according to my sources, which I went to, maybe 1,900 Hamas fighters. But then, if you don't support Hamas in the Gaza, Hamas will end you. And that is the case. It has been the case since this supposed ceasefire. But the thing is, there's never been a ceasefire. In fact,
Yes.
they're still fighting now. Not to the same, what was it? Gadol. It's not the same size. It's not as big of a fight.
Oh, okay.
But it's a case where they haven't stopped because Hamas doesn't stop shooting. They keep shooting.
That's right.
And the fact that they're using, by the way, there is a difference between Hamas and Palestinians. Hamas is a political movement from Syria, okay? And they control the Gaza Strip, and the Western Bank, that's the PLO. It's not the same group. They got a lot of the same ideologies, but not the same group. But the thing about Hamas is they're not Palestinians, okay? as a whole. I mean, they have some who are participating, but as I was looking at the film, at the footage, you look at the footage from the original event and ask yourself, how many of those people are Arab? In fact, you might find there's a lot of Houthis there.
Mm-hmm.
And from my sources,
That's from Yemen, right?
yeah. Okay. The thing with the Houthis, that still goes on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's not a war, it's just a bunch of crazy people, which are going to all die. But here we have this thing where Israel had to deal with Hezbollah up north, who's very pro-Hamas, okay? Had to deal with them, and now with the Houthis and with Hamas, all at the same time. And why? Because they were keeping Sukkot, the day of Pentecost. That's when they chose to attack. Interesting, in the past, they chose Yom Kippur. They choose Jewish high holy days, okay, for their assaults and such. So,
You know, I can't help but think that, you know, when we're talking about a death culture, Hezbollah is aligned with Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Hezbollah is predominantly Shia Muslim. Hamas is predominantly Sunni Muslim. And they hate Iran, even though they get resources from Iran because
well,
they
they
have a
hate each
common
other
enemy.
anyway.
They hate each other, and yet the Hezbollah and Hamas are able to work together collectively against Israel because they have a common enemy in Israel, even though they secretly hate each other. Even though there's political divides all over the place, all these Muslim groups hate each other. The only thing they have in unison is their hatred for Israel.
Now, let me put that in kind of more Americanized terms. That's like Baptists and Pentecostals getting together. Okay. It normally doesn't happen. Okay, it should, but it normally doesn't. And here you have people who hate, but they have a common enemy. Now, if I understand, everything right now is back on the fringe because
Yes.
the idea was that they had what, 28
The hostages, really?
hostages. No, had 28 dead and 20 living.
Yes.
They released
think
the
that's
living, okay, and Israel released their hostages, their prisoners. They're supposed to return the bodies, but only returned 3. And then they tried to return a 4th one, which was not a Jewish person, but it was a person who was deceased, dressed in an IDF uniform. You know, hoping to see if they could play that type of a card. And of course they were caught. And so now, will they go to war, continue in war, okay, over the failure to return the, 19, 20 bodies, whatever it is?
And I think that's a possibility, but I think there's another component to that as well, and that is that Hamas, part of the agreement is that Hamas has to be willing to lay down arms. They have to be willing to lay down arms and quit fighting. And are they willing to do it? They haven't shown that yet. At least some of them have not shown that yet. They still want to continue to fight, even opposing other Hamas members who want to lay down arms. Mm-hmm. Is that going to happen?
My opinion, I pray it does, but probably won't. I want to be wrong, Lord. I really do.
I want to be wrong as well, but there's a lot of trepidation there because there's a lot that in the peace agreement, there's a lot that they're supposed to live up to. I don't see them living up to that.
Well, I just happen to have right here the 20 points of the plan, which I would like us to look at in just a moment and kind of just briefly go through it.
Absolutely.
But I'd like to explain to the people why the return of these bodies, okay, dead martyrs, okay, is such a big deal. You see, we in the Western culture, we don't have the same mindset. In the Jewish world, okay, every one of those bodies is still an image of God, for they were created in the image of God, and thus are required by Jewish law. They should have a proper burial, a place of marking, a place for grieving, and it's so ingrained within the Jewish people.
Yes.
They will not leave anyone behind. I remember a number of years ago, they took 4 Israelis and over the border in Lebanon and killed them, and they traded something like 200 living prisoners to get back the 4 bodies, okay? Because it's a big deal to us. We treat our dead with honor and respect. We treat our dead almost as a sense of royalty, okay? Especially if they were martyrs.
Yes.
And so for Israel to leave these images, these people made in the image of God, in the hands of mutilators, it's just unbearable.
Absolutely.
And so it's my opinion, this is my opinion, that if you don't see those deceased hostages returned in a week, maybe 2, it's going to be all on again, full bore. And now what's happening is Hamas is saying, well, we're not sure where they're all at. We think some of them might have been in those tunnels you blew up, or some might be in the tunnels that you flooded. You know, we're going to need some time to find some bodies.
Yes.
Need some time. You said you had them. You know? So the big deal with those missing, deceased hostages is the Jewish perspective of the respect for the dead and for the image of God. It's like the story of the Good Samaritan.
Yes.
So they saw the Jewish guy and they walked past him. The priest and Levite did. Okay? But when the Samaritan came along, he understood that this is the image of God laying in the dirt. Jews won't do that.
That's why even our enemies, we are not to allow, even those who are executed on stake, you are not to allow them to stay on a stake or on a tree for 24 hours.
Yeah, and we're not even permitted to rejoice in the death of an enemy.
Right.
I was in Jerusalem when Yasser Arafat died, okay, and it was public, printed, broadcasted, okay. You are not to celebrate the death of Yasser Arafat. There was a small handful of people outside my hotel window, I say small, but 12, who actually were doing that. And they were arrested and taken away because the rabbis said, no, it's not proper.
And they're right.
Right.
Rabbi, I wanted to go off on a little bit of a rabbit trail before we cover this in a little bit more detail. But one of the things that concerns me most is the anti-Semitism, especially that arose after October 7th, the anti-Semitism that appeared here in the United States and all over the world in many places.
Yes.
And what led to that perspective? What led to this anti-Israel perspective? Well, it's been coming for a while because we know that Hamas, Hezbollah, and all the other players are master manipulators, and they're master politicians. They know how to play the game, and they know how to pull on people's sympathy. And it got me thinking about the modern woke movement, which is heavily involved in the anti-Israel movement and the whole Free Palestine movement. And it's very much connected to a socialism mentality. And most of them are usually trained in a school where they're taught socialism, and they have carried that with them. And wokeism and socialism looks at suffering and the prosperous in different ways than we traditionally do. Because in wokeism and socialism, they have been taught to look at those who are suffering and looking at those who are prosperous is the suffering is a result of those who are prosperous. So you are suffering because they're the prosperous over here have lied to you, they've stolen from you, they've cheated from you, they've deceived you. They've done all of these things to hold you down. And sometimes it is the case. You know, there are without a doubt. I mean, we can look at scripture where
All is endless.
yes,
Be careful throwing the rocks, though.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. But we have to look at it from the perspective of right and wrong. Just because A group or a person is suffering doesn't mean it's a result of somebody who's prosperous. Sometimes it's a result of, sometimes it's a result of a person's own actions where they make really bad decisions in their own life. Sometimes it's a result of their leadership and people who are leading them. You can't help but look at the suffering of the Palestinians. I have heart for the suffering of the Palestinians. I do. I don't want to see anybody suffer. I want to see people prosperous. I want to see people live in peace. But sometimes people live with the consequences of their own actions. And part of that is when I'm sure there was some election shenanigans going on, but when you have a group like Hamas leading you for no other purpose than they want power, they want power, they want control, they don't care about you, they don't care what happens to you, what do you expect to happen different? Do you expect to prosper? Is it Israel's fault because Israel has a good economy, because they have good
Work ethics?
work ethic, fertility in the land that they've done themselves, they work hard to do, good technology advancement, good infrastructure, and then you look at the leadership of the leadership that Hamas has had over Gaza Strip, and you look at the utter disaster that it has been, but you have to have somebody to blame. Who are you going to blame yourself? So we got to have a common enemy. Let's blame them. That has been the history of Israel. Throughout history, nations and peoples have always looked to the Jewish people and blamed the Jewish people for their own problems. We got to have somebody to blame. So
It's also because there's always been God's blessing there. Those who bless you, I'll bless. Those who curse you, I'll curse.
absolutely.
And that's why Israel's still here, and the Nazis are not, and the Bolsheviks are not, and the Romans are not, and
All the parasites.
all the parasites, Hittites, parasites, Jebusites. But I do believe that the fact that causality is something that most people don't want to understand. We have this whole thing where we want to have wealth redistribution. Take it away from
Yeah.
the people who earned it and give it to those who don't work. Okay? I believe in a welfare system that elevates people and raises them up and not
Yes.
leaves them in generational welfare.
Yes.
Okay? And I believe in giving those opportunities. But when a group of people become welfare minded, it becomes a way of life. And so they live in the context of their culture. Okay?
And you become submissive subjects to those that you continuously vote into office in some cases.
I heard an interview this week. Interesting interview. It was a girl, a Palestinian from Gaza. When she was 6 years old, she pulled a pot of boiling water off the stove and burned herself horribly. And they took her to Hadassah, which is Israel's #1 hospital. And they spent several years with skin grafts and literally healing her up and bringing her back together. Then they sent her back into the Gaza Strip. Okay? She was healed. Where she was recruited by Hamas to become a suicide bomber. So she goes through the indoctrination and gets her suicide vest, and they give her 3 targets: a military target, a transportation target, or the hospital that healed her. She chose to be a suicide bomber at the hospital that took through the healing. She gets over there, and of course, IDF stops her, and they realize she has a vest on, and she gets up close and doesn't work. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. And so they take her, and she goes to jail, goes to prison for several years. But while in an Israeli prison, she got a college degree.
You can't make this stuff up.
No. And then they sent her back to Gaza after she did her time. And so this reporter went to interview her, expecting to hear a story of redemption. And she tells her story, and he says, "And what about now?" She says, "I'd do it again." Why would you do it all over again? I was this close to paradise. That's indoctrination. That's indoctrination.
Yes.
And even if everything worked perfectly between now and Jesus comes, it's going to cost 1 to 2 generations, living generations. It's going to take you 80 years to weed out most of that hatred.
There's no
we still have it
question,
today.
yeah.
I mean, even here, we still have racial issues, and we still have people who want to see the South rise up again, you know. But here's a person who's received nothing but good, even though she meant harm, and would do it again. So it's always interesting. But we have those 20 points in which President Trump brought to the table. And by the way, President Trump,
Yes.
now, I don't know if you noticed, but he completely circumvented the UN.
I did, yes. Well, it does. I thought there was a stipulation in here where,
Where they could become participants.
yes, they
Okay.
could become participants, but the peace process alone was completely separate, which,
So let's take a couple of these and go over them. And this is from, and you can find it online, the plan for 20 points for the peace of Gaza. The first, Gaza will be a
de-radicalized, terror-free zone that does not pose to a threat to its neighbors. That means disarming Hamas.
yes, disarming Hamas. Okay. You know, how you going to do that? I don't know. But it means confiscation of weapons and bombs and
Yes.
and rockets and elements and such, and guarding the port so new ones can't come in.
And that also includes, as part of this, I read down here where part of that demilitarization of Gaza was closing up all of the underground tunnels and things like that as well. So that's part of this process that we've got to see happen still. There's a lot of steps that take place. And just because, you got two sides that say, yeah, we're going to agree to this, are you willing to uphold it and live it out?
By the way, you know where those tunnels go? Most people don't know this. Twice, Israel tried to give the Gaza Strip to Egypt. Twice, Egypt said they don't want them. So
Yeah.
Egypt turned around and built a wall. Sound familiar?
Yes.
They built a wall between the Gaza Strip and themselves. And the Gazans, Palestinians, dug tunnels under so they can move stuff from the Gaza Strip into Egypt back and forth. But number two, Gaza will be redeveloped for the benefit of the people of Gaza who have suffered more than enough. Now, redeveloped.
And again, this goes up in a little bit more detail on what that's going to look like, because you're going to have outside groups, including President Trump, along with the former Prime Minister, Tony Blair of England, of the UK. It was going to be working together with a select group of pre-approved Palestinian committee to start the development of a true Gazan city,
Yes.
a prosperous Gazan city.
Yes. Other words, a real city. It'll have, of course, stores and banks and transportation and, yes, some hotels and jobs and such. And so the people can build the world they really want,
Yes.
okay? And not live in poverty being, directed by gunmen.
I'm going to jump down to 7 here because it has to do with that. Upon acceptance of this agreement, full aid will be immediately sent to the Gaza Strip. At a minimum, aid quantities will be consistent with what was included in the January 19, 2025 agreement regarding humanitarian aid, including rehabilitation of structures, water, electricity, sewage, a rehabilitation of hospitals and bakeries, and entry of necessary equipment to remove rubble and open roads. And it will be number 8. It talks about the Gaza Strip will proceed without interference from either Hamas, it doesn't say this, but two parties through United Nations and its agencies and the Red Crescent. Of course, it seems to be referring to Hamas and Israel. Will take a step back in the rebuilding of Gaza Strip, but it will be headed up by an international committee that will be rebuilding.
By the way, for those that don't know, items 2 through 6, which we just skipped, are all about the hostages, the return,
Yes.
and the disarming. But let's go on now. Number 8.
Yes.
Did you read that already?
Yes, that was about the involvement of the international agencies, possibly UN and other agencies, and the Red Crescent. And
Okay. Now, point 9, Gaza will be governed by or under the temporary transitional government. Okay. And this, of course, the Palestinian Committee responsible for delivering the day-to-day running of the public services, municipalities for the people of Gaza. This committee will be made up of qualified Palestinians and international experts. And once again, this is where we got like Tony Blair, and we got President Trump,
Yep.
and some others from the real world.
yes,
I'm going to call it that. Not the military, not the political, but those who are builders and manufacturers and those who know how to be prosperous. You know, I'm going to be honest with you. I admire Elon Musk. I admire the president. I admire these people who saw the vision and made things happen.
yes.
And this is to be a committee of visionaries to make it happen.
And it's kind of tied together. Number 10, the point number 10, is a Trump economic development plan will be to rebuild and energize Gaza, will be created by convening a panel of experts who have helped birth some of the thriving modern miracles in the Middle East. You know, and I think about that and I go, you know, with all the criticism of the president over his position, his support of the nation of Israel, he is putting, he is not taking money from this. He's not benefiting from this. He is putting his own time and money and investment into creating a prosperous Gaza Strip. And he's wanting to be behind this, you know, and there is, I know there are going to be naysayers. Well, he's just doing it to enrich himself. He has no economic benefit in this whatsoever. He wants to leave a legacy where he has helped people live in peace and bring peace to that region for people. I have doubts on whether or not it's going to succeed, but I applaud the desire to want to do that and to be able to invest time and energy to want to do that and want to bring a prosperous Palestinian people.
As I go through these 20 points that he brought to the table, if they were carried out, the Gaza Strip could be the envy of the Middle East. It could easily compete with cities even like Dubai. And I went to my sources once again. I got sources, by the way. And I asked, what about the Arab nations? Many of the more oil-rich nations, okay, are willing to make investments in making this happen. It's not Gazans trying to pick up, you know, rocks and stones. And
Yes.
No. There are peoples and governments, Arabs and non-Arabs, okay, and Israel, are willing to build something that's everlasting.
You look at the success of nations like the United Arab Emirates and Qatar economically and what they've been able to do. You know, you can follow a very similar plan for the economic development of Gaza. That is besides the argument of whether or not there should be a separate Palestinian state. That's a different argument. But going solely off of what President Trump has proposed here, and Marco
It has been
Rubio,
accepted.
and has been accepted, if they followed this, there is a potential for a huge economic development and peace in the Gaza Strip and for the Palestinian people.
They're not going to be saying those poor Gazans.
That's right.
Okay. But would you read number 12 to us?
Sure. It says, no one will be forced to leave Gaza, and those who wish to leave will be free to do so and free to return. We will encourage people to stay and offer them the opportunity to build a better Gaza.
Now, I just got some news for you. Up to this point, no Arab country has offered to take in refugees.
That's right.
None. Not Egypt, not Qatar, not Iran, not Iraq, not Arab Emirates, none of them. Not Lebanon, not Syria. So these really are the black sheep, in essence, of the Arab world. And here, they're going to be given the opportunity to make something, if they will. But they got years and years and years and years of anger and prejudice backed up, which is going to be the hardest thing to overcome. So if we keep going, what does 13 and 14 tell us?
13 and 14, I think, are really big ones. Hamas and other factions agree to not have any role in the governance of Gaza, directly, indirectly, or in any form. All military terror and offensive infrastructure, including tunnels and weapons producing facilities, will be destroyed and not be rebuilt. There will be a process of demilitarization of Gaza under the supervision of independent monitors, which will include placing weapons permanently beyond use through an agreement process of decommissioning and supported by an international funded buyback and reinterrogation program, all verified by the independent committee. I think that is powerful to say, hey, look, you got all these weapons. You really want peace? Hand them over. We're going to demilitarize them, and we'll buy them from you. So you get money in return. We're going to help fund you by giving your weapons up. Will
That's
that
right.
happen?
We'll see. I think it'll happen on some level. But if it's like America, well, we got what? 400 million weapons out there?
Yes.
Some will give up a few. Some will keep them all. Okay. But 14, a guarantee will be provided by regional partners to ensure that Hamas and the factions comply with their obligations and that New Gaza poses no threat to its neighbor or its people. Simply put, it won't be the UN peacekeepers, not UNSHMUN. You know, that's what they're called in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
UNSHMUN means United Nothing.
That makes perfect sense.
Okay. But here, there is a peace overseeing group that's going to help de-weaponize it
Yes.
and protect it at the same time, but not the UN.
And that kind of ties with number 15 as well. Not only is there a demilitarization, but the United States will work with Arab and international partners. When it talks about working with Arab and international partners, I'm sure they're talking about Saudi Arabia, Qatar, that's a game. Qatar, United Arab Emirates, those that at least on some level can be at least trustworthy. To deploy in Gaza, and will train up Palestinian police forces to be able to help govern their own areas. They call the ISF will work with Israel and Egypt to help secure border areas along with newly trained Palestinian police forces. It's critical to prevent munitions from entering Gaza and to facilitate the rapid and source flow of goods to rebuild a vitalized Gaza. So in other words, we will have Israel and we will have Egypt working with these.
And Jordan also said,
Yes.
okay,
Yes, working to make sure that you don't have these weapons coming back in. They will be decommissioned and these weapons will not come back in.
16 is one of the most important things you need to hear this evening.
Israel will not occupy or annex Israel. As the ISF establish control and stability, the Israel Defense Forces will withdraw based on standards, milestones, and timeframes linked to demilitarization that will be agreed upon between the IDF, the ISF, the guarantors, and the United States, with the objective of a secure Gaza that no longer poses a threat to Israel, Egypt, or its citizens. Particularly, the IDF will progressively hand over the Gaza territory it occupies to the ISF according to an agreement that they will make with the directions. Oh, I turned the wrong way. With the transitional authority until they are withdrawn completely from Gaza, save for a security perimeter presence that will remain until Gaza is properly secured from its resurgent threat to Israel.
But the first line, Israel will not occupy or annex Gaza.
Is that assuming everything else is agreed upon and fulfilled?
And fulfilled, yes.
I think that's a no-go if they don't agree to demilitarize. They don't agree to de-arm Hamas.
No, we ain't leaving. That's what it boils down to.
Yes.
Now, 17 is its counterpoint. In the event Hamas delays or rejects this proposal, the above, including the scaled up aid operations, will proceed in the terror-free areas handed over to the IDF and the ISF. In other words, if you don't do it, we ain't going anywhere. We're staying right where we're at. And then once you go ahead and take 18.
An interfaith dialogue process will be established based on the values of tolerance and peaceful coexistence to try and change mindsets and and narratives of Palestinians and Israelis by emphasizing the benefits that can be derived from peace.
Of course. Okay. While the Gaza redevelopment advances, and when the PA, Palestinian Authority, reform program is faithfully carried out, the conditions may finally be in place for a credible pathway to a Palestinian self-determination and statehood, which we recognize as the aspiration of the Palestinian people. Play ball, you might get it. Especially when they're already saying, bottom line, we don't want Gaza. We don't want to annex Gaza. We don't want to take over Gaza. We just want a peaceful neighbor in Gaza. Then the last one is number 20. Would you read for us, please?
Sure. The United States will establish a dialogue between Israel and the Palestinians to agree on a political horizon for a peaceful and prosperous coexistence.
Okay. It seems to me from a rational perspective that this is an honorable goal to try to attain. Okay. But it's very fragile and it could blow up in a heartbeat.
And that is part of my biggest concern is, one, I am not necessarily a supporter of a two-state solution. But I know that the people of Israel want peace. The people of Israel are desperate for peace. And the people of Israel have proven over and over and over again that they're willing to negotiate for the sake of peace. If you lay down your weapons and you quit attacking us and you quit hating us, we will agree with this. On a personal level, I don't think it's needed because Israel has already offered peace to Palestinians.
Most definitely, many times.
Yes, many times, including, hey, look, you can become an Israeli citizen. You can get benefits. You can serve in the Israeli army. You can serve in the IDF. You can serve on the government. You can serve in the Knesset. You just need to come under Israel's government and accept Israel's right to exist.
And there are many Arab Israelis which have full privileges. They're part of the government of Israel, okay? And within those some are Muslim and some are Christian.
Yes.
But they're all considered Israeli.
But I can understand also the people there, because I feel it sometimes, although it's not to that degree. But you hear talk of, well, maybe we should just cut off the left coast. Maybe we should just cut off California, Oregon, and Washington. Let them have their own country. And there's a part of me that's like, well, I'm not entirely opposed to that. Or better yet, cut off Washington, D.C. and say, you can be your own country. We'll treat you like the Vatican. I can understand why they would want to do that for the sake of peace.
It's not peace.
I know. It's not. I know that. And that's why the whole thing, it gives me a little bit of hope, but also makes me very concerned because you're dependent upon specifically Hamas, a people to agree to do something they've never agreed to do before and has broken their word countless times.
And yet their charter says we will never do peace. We will do a truce, which is essence meant to build back up your resources and such. Okay. Now, do you have any idea how much the U.S. has spent on their war?
I have no idea.
Okay. I got the numbers right here. Okay. 21.7 billion in military aid. And in February alone, another 2.5 billion. Okay. Now, it's expensive. But believe it or not, the idea is to save lives. And lives are worth it.
Absolutely, of course.
We should never consider the money over life. I was talking to a lady the other day about abortion here in the U.S. And in Colorado, they decided that they're going to pay for all abortions if you can't. And I said, well, don't you still think it's murder? She says, well, what's it going to cost us to raise that child? And if he goes to prison, how much is it going to cost us? So the whole thing was boiled down to $1. Okay?
Yes.
Without the idea that a child can have a good home, a child can be adopted, okay? We can work at elevating our own issues here, you know? And I think the same thing is going to be true in Israel. You're going to have to elevate the people to get out of their slum mind thinking, you know? So anyway.
Do you think, I've kind of thought about this a little bit, this proposal from the Trump administration, this peace proposal, do you think it's meant to be literally fulfilled? In other words, that the administration sent this proposal and said, this is what we're going to do, and this is what we hope is going to happen? Or is it a, hey, look, you know what, they've been asking, there's all this push for a two-state solution, let's move forward with it, and let's show them exactly what we offer and how fair of a deal it is, knowing that it will probably be destroyed, knowing that Hamas would never agree to that.
I think from Israel's perspective, they want this to be true.
I agree, absolutely.
Okay. If I look at the historical Hamas, it ain't going to happen. If I listen to the president, and I did, his speech he gave to the Knesset, by the way, he has received the longest standing ovation that was ever by anybody, including Golda Meir and all of the others, longer than any of them ever in the Knesset. And when you listen to his speech, it really is a speech of possibility and hope. And I think he's not dumb. Netanyahu's definitely not dumb. They know who they're dealing with. They expect a number of setbacks, but I think they're going to try to push for this unless Hamas, Hezbollah, and the other groups blow it up from the inside. Not from the outside, but from the inside.
And I think that does make sense. I think that does make sense that let's push it, and it's going to take a while to fulfill all of these obligations, because I guarantee you that Hamas is not going to readily give up their weapons.
Nope.
The people are going to have, the Palestinian people are going to have to be willing to fight back and say, no, we want this. Are you willing to want this? And I think ultimately it lays in the hands of the Palestinian people. Are they willing to do what is necessary to pursue this peace? Do they want their own self-government? Do they want a restored Gaza? Do they want a restored, or not a restored, but they want a Palestinian, self-governing Palestinian state? Then they got to work for it. They got to prove themselves.
Well, there's one aspect of this plan which was not touched on. The survivors of this modern-day Holocaust and the damage to the families who lost more than 1,900 people. You know, that's a whole additional ball of wax.
Yes.
Okay, that has to be addressed. And the fact, I don't know how you comfort the families of 1,900, okay? But Israel's been very resilient in bouncing back from all of its wars and such. And part of that bouncing back is making sure that they honored their deceased. Those bodies have to come home.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and so when I look at those broken, wounded Israelis, those have been emotionally destroyed. Okay, I can't help but crying out for them. Okay.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, we're just about the end of our program. Now, before we go any further, there's no N-O. Ask Rabbi Friday tomorrow morning. I'll be out of town. but I will be back Monday if it pleases the Lord. But you can do something right now. And we had a great Simchat Torah.
It was a lot
last
of
night.
fun. Yes.
Right. And so I want you to enjoy the same benefits. I'm going to give you two opportunities. Number one, the reading of the Torah from the very beginning starts this Shabbat with the reading from Genesis 1:1 up to Genesis chapter 5. If you would like to be part of the reading cycle that all Jewish people participate in, I mean globally, you can go to First Fruits of Zion and download the reading schedule. And in 1 year, you have read the entire Torah, you have read most of the prophets, and a nice chunk of the New Testament.
And I am doing something, I just need to print it out, but I've got it set up. I'm doing something a little bit different this year for those who wish to go through that, as in addition to what is available for First Fruits of Zion, is I went through the 4 Gospels and broke the 4 Gospels out in each reading step by step so that you go through the entire 4 Gospels in 1 year.
Okay. And you have this available when?
I will have it available on Saturday. I've already got it ready. I just need to print it out.
So you'll have it available on Saturday, which means next Thursday, you can send us an email address and we'll get it to you.
We can get it to you. Absolutely.
Good. Now, the second thing they can do, okay, is you can join us in pressing the ministry forward, a ministry of hope and joy. Hit the buttons, like, share, follow, and yes, donate.
Donate's a good thing. Donuts are good too, but donate's even better.
Well, if you donate, we'll have some donuts. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and step to the back and get ready to bring our program to an end. But Rabbi Rittenhouse, would you take a moment and pray for Israel and pray for us?
Absolutely. I will do that. You betcha.
All right?
Again, just a clear reminder and a thank you for those who do donate and those who do support us in a multitude of different ways. We cannot do this without you. It is important to us, and it's important to keep this ministry going. So let's go for Hashem in prayer. Rabbanu Shalom, Master of the universe, our great God and King, we thank you. We thank you for this time we can come together. We thank you for your blessing. We thank you for this peace agreement, Lord God, and I know that you know all things, and even though we're hopeful, yet we have some nervousness about this. We cling to you, knowing that you know all things, and that you have all things in your loving hands. We ask that you would bless your people Israel with peace. We ask that you would bring peace in Israel, that Hamas would agree to lay down its weapons, that hearts would be changed, the hearts of Palestinians and the hearts of Israel's enemies would change, and that they would love your people instead of hating your people so much, Lord God, and there would be true peace. Lord God, we ask you would work in the midst of this to protect your people, to watch over your people, and to prosper your people. And we ask all this in Yeshua's name. Amen. Amen.